The mule Gulliver was from Nottingham in England. He studied at Cambridge and then became apprenticed to a surgeon in London. Gulliver used his spare time to learn about navigation and mathematics. He believed that one day he would travel to far-off lands. Gulliver worked for 3 years as a ship's surgeon. He then returned to London, got married, and tried, without success, to work as a medic. Finally, he met Captain William Pritchard, master of the Antelope, and set sail for the South Seas. They left Bristol on the 4th of May, 1699. Far into the South Seas, their ship was overwhelmed by a violent storm. Many of the crew died. On November 5th, the ship was blown onto some rocks and was doomed. Gulliver tried to escape in a lifeboat, but the boat was inundated and sank. Gulliver had the choice to swim or to die. He swam until he was exhausted and his feet dropped. He could feel the sand below, so he knew he was close to land, and he managed to walk to safety. Gulliver had arrived in a land he would come to know as Lilliput. He could see no sign of either houses or inhabitants. Weak from exhaustion, Gulliver lay down and fell into a deep sleep, not waking before it was daylight. When Gulliver awoke, he realized that he had been strongly fastened to the ground. His captors, known as Lilliputians, were human-like creatures no more than a few inches tall. They provided him with food and drink, which was laced with a sleeping potion. He slept all through the following night. While Gulliver slept, his captors placed him onto a carriage and took him to a disused temple near their capital city. The carriage was drawn by hundreds of the local inhabitants. At the disused temple, Gulliver was inspected by the emperor and his senior officers. Thousands of the local inhabitants came to marvel at him. Gulliver was chained to the temple, and the ropes that bound him were cut. Now he could move a little and lie down in the shelter of the old temple. Gulliver entertained the court in many ways and gradually gained the confidence of the emperor. On one occasion, he stood like a colossus while the emperor's armies marched through his legs with drums beating and colors flying. Gulliver was finally granted his liberty and had his chains removed permanently. He was given a daily allowance of meat and drink sufficient to support 1,724 Lilliputians. Every village in the kingdom helped to supply the sustenance that Gulliver needed. The emperor allowed Gulliver to visit the capital city of Mildendo. Gulliver took great care not to damage any of the people or the buildings. The empress herself took time to greet Gulliver at the window of her apartment in the center of the royal palace. The emperor's principal secretary told Gulliver that the empire needed his help. The kingdom of Lilliput faced the threat of an invasion from the neighboring kingdom of Blefuscu. The Blefuscudians had equipped a large fleet of ships, and Lilliput would soon be attacked. Gulliver pledged that he was ready to defend with his life the emperor and his state. To prevent the invasion by the armies of Blefuscu, Gulliver was determined to capture their fleet. He planned to tie together their greatest warships and tow them back to Lilliput. He equipped himself with ropes and set off across the channel to where their fleet was gathered. When they saw him, the Blefuscudians were so frightened that they leapt out of their ships and swam for their lives. The whole fleet was left undefended but for the archers who were on the shore, along with more than 30,000 of their countrymen. The archers discharged several thousand arrows at Gulliver in great volleys, and he was struck many times in the hands and face. In spite of this vicious assault, he managed to fasten together 50 of their finest ships, which he cut from their anchors and took back to Lilliput. Upon arriving at the royal port of Lilliput, Gulliver presented the captured ships to the emperor. When the Blefuscudians saw their finest ships being taken to Lilliput, they were left in a state of grief and despair. The Blefuscudians sued for peace, and the war ended. Some of the emperor's advisors were jealous of Gulliver. They wanted to kill him or blind him, but one of the emperor's courtiers warned Gulliver, and he escaped to Blefuscu and was welcomed there by their king. Gulliver noticed an upturned boat off the shore of Blefuscu and persuaded the king to help him salvage this boat. Because Gulliver's actions had averted a major war, the king agreed to his request and ordered that Gulliver should receive all the help and materials he needed to fit up this boat into good repair. After about 1 month, the repairs to the boat were complete. The king allowed Gulliver to take all the provisions that he could carry. When the boat was fully stocked, Gulliver was ready to sail. The royal court gathered to see Gulliver off amid great ceremony. Gulliver set sail on the 24th day of September in the year 1701. Gulliver sailed north and was eventually spotted by one of the crew of a merchant ship. He was welcomed on board by her captain, Mr. John Bedell, a very civil man and an excellent sailor who agreed to take Gulliver home to England.